What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today is international break time, so we've got a bit more time until the next game week, which is obviously deadline for game week 9. So we're going to do a few different videos as we normally do in these kind of breaks before we go to the normal content next week. So we're going to start off with a wildcard draft. I know a lot of people are looking at using their wildcard over the international break. Perhaps they want to change their team around a bit, a few injuries here or there, whatever it might be. I've come up with a wildcard draft. Going to go through a few talking points first, must-haves and stuff like that, and I'll get into the draft itself. So if you enjoy this content, make sure to give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and let's jump into it. So we'll talk about must-have players, or really just players that you should probably at least give some consideration to when building your squad and obviously picking your players. Cheap goalkeeper up first. I know I've had this on pretty much every video I've done like this. My opinion hasn't really changed. When you look at the scoring for goalkeepers so far, there's nothing for me that warrants getting a premium keeper. When you look at who's available as well, David De Gea, to be fair, Man United still, underlying stats-wise, doing okay defensive. I think in the last 4 game weeks, they've conceded the least amount of shots inside the box, something like 17, and the next best is 23. So they're actually doing really well in that regard. Obviously, in terms of performance, it's not going well. Morale's dropped. And in general, Man United not looking like good options. So David De Gea's out. Lloris is injured. Alisson's been injured. And Edison, you can get Otamendi for less. If you think they're going to get clean sheets, you probably just go for him instead. So definitely not going for premium keepers. In terms of who to get for cheap goalkeepers, I still don't think there's a standout. Again, I know I've been saying that quite a lot. I think for me, it would be between Pope and Ryan. I've been quite pro-Pope for most of the season. I still think he's a great option. We could look at Ryan as well. I think Potter's done really well for Brighton. They've looked pretty good. Nice clean sheet against Spurs, although obviously Spurs not been doing too great recently. But I think Brighton have been looking pretty decent. In terms of kind of shots in the box conceded for both Brighton and Burnley, very similar over the course of the season, very similar in the last 4 game weeks as well. Similar for saves as well. Ryan's just about ahead for the last 4 game weeks, but over the course of the season, they've been pretty equal. So I'd almost go for whichever one you prefer out of those two and just stick with them. Alexander-Arnold, I think he's just creating so many chances, right up there with the likes of Kevin De Bruyne for chances created. If you expect Liverpool to get clean sheets eventually this season, which I'm expecting will happen at some point, they'll go on a nice run. I still think he's probably the best defender to own. I still want to own one Liverpool defender, so Trent will be the one for me. Defender enabler, so if you had Lundstrom from the start, obviously 4 million, you've got to keep him. I think he just offers too much value. If you're someone like me that kind of transferred Lundstrom out inadvertently when you got hacked, or if you just never owned him, then you might want to go for a cheaper enabler. Someone like Kelly. Palace have done very well when he's been in the side, so maybe he might keep his place. Or Rico, with Daniels out quite long term for Bournemouth, he could be a good option too. But I think, given that a lot of people are moving back to kind of 3-4-3, 3-5-2, you don't necessarily need to play all your defenders every single week. Having a cheap enabler in there lets you put more funds elsewhere. De Bruyne, if fit, I still think he's been so good this season. The 2 games that Man City have struggled in, he didn't play. Obviously, it looks integral to the team. We already knew that. And it's just looked irresistible when he's played, both potentially goals and also, of course, assists, which is his bread and butter. So if he's fit, which you'll know more about by the time the international break finishes, he's definitely going to be in the team. And then Abraham up front, I think, is looking like the best striker right now in terms of value. Chelsea looking really good for goals. Maybe can't defend quite as well just yet. But attacking-wise, they're really good. Mount and obviously the likes of Abraham as well. So up front, he'd be probably the first name on my team sheet, as you'll see when you see the draft. So just a couple of other things to consider before we look at the draft. And some of these I've considered before. Aguero versus Sterling, or whether you should have either of these players right now. Obviously, the game against Wolves not great. A lot of us captained the likes of Sterling or Aguero and came away with absolutely nothing. So going forward, should we still have them in? I still think I would want one Man City attacker, one Liverpool attacker, and just have one of each for now. I think maybe when Liverpool's fixtures turn again, perhaps you could have Salah and Mane instead of one of Aguero or Sterling. But it's not just how many points they should get. And obviously, we haven't really seen it recently. I saw some good tweets from a guy called Apple Bonkers who said that if you had got rid of Sterling for game week 2 onwards and got someone like McTominay in, he would have pretty much scored the same points from game week 2 to 8. As Sterling has. But obviously you're hoping that will change at some point, and Man City will get into gear, Sterling will score points and go from there. The one thing obviously with Sterling is he's playing very, very wide on the left. He's kind of creating the width down that left side for Man City. They've got no Mendy, he's injured again, and obviously Sané's injured out as well. So Sterling's providing that width, which means he's not in the box as much. One of his bread and butter goals is obviously the tap in at the back post. So that is something to watch out for. If you don't want to go for him, maybe you go for Aguero as well, instead. And then Salah versus Mane. Look, this has been a closely kind of talked about contest between these two for the whole season. They're very close on points. Mane is just ahead now. I tweeted back kind of weeks ago saying just pick one and stick with them. And I still think that's the way to go. Given the price difference, I think, especially if you're struggling for money, I would just go for Mane. I think they're both really good options. Salah's got penalties to fall back on when Milner's not on the pitch. But given the saving in money and the fact that it does look like Mane might keep up with him for points for most of the season, and he's super reliable at home as well. So if you need a captaincy option for Liverpool, Mane is probably just as good as Salah. So I wouldn't begrudge anyone going for Salah. I've still got him. I'm not in a rush to get rid of him. But if I was starting again right now in Wildcard, and especially if it was the choice between a player I really wanted or a player I'm not too bothered about, I'll probably just save the money and get Mane. And then formations, I'm not going to really say whether you should go 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. I've kind of got my preferences depending on the type of money you've got to spend in both areas. But one thing I'm pretty sure about going forward from now on is having 3 at the back. I don't think too many of the big hitting defenders that we wanted to do well have done well. The likes of Van Aanholt are right up there, Pereira are right up there as well. But circumstances kind of dictate that you might not want Pereira because you've got Soyuncu for cheaper money as well. So I don't know if the money is there to bother spending basically in defence. So I'll go for 3 defenders, I think, 5 in midfield or 3 up front, whichever you want to go. But 4 at the back, 5 at the back might still work going forward. But I think given the value we've got in attack, that's probably the way or the place to spend your money at the moment. So this is the draft I came up with for a wildcard in Game Week 9 as it stands right now. Obviously dependent on De Bruyne being injured or not. One caveat I will say before I go into some of the players that I've picked. Obviously every team's different. Everyone picked different players at the same time. If you have Pukki from 6.5 million or if you've got him at 7.1 million, that obviously dictates who you can bring in elsewhere because of the money you've got tied up. I obviously, unfortunately, lost my account for a bit, so I lost a lot of the value. So, for example, I can't put Lundstrom in this team because he's now 4.5 million. But if you had him from 4 million, you'd absolutely want him in. So, this should give you a still kind of overview of the players that I will be looking at. Yes, I'm sure you've got some really good ideas as well. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything major you would change, any player that you absolutely think should be in that I've not included. But going forward, I think in goal, like I said, Ryan and Pope is close. I think one of the reasons you could go for Ryan is if he gets injured, you've got Button at 4 million. Obviously, you don't have that same luxury with Pope. I honestly think those two are so close. I don't really have a good way to split them. I think Brighton have done really well under Potter, like I said, but Burnley without Europa League, looking kind of, not maybe back to their best, but back looking like a team that's going to keep a good few clean sheets this season, which they didn't really do last season as well. In defence, it's quite similar to the team I've actually got right now in actual FPL without a wild card. So Trent Alexander-Arnold is in. Otamendi, I know a few people worried about Man City defence without Laporte, and to be honest, it is a fair concern. I just think that the way they play, so much possession, they don't give up too many chances. If you actually look at the kind of top 4 teams for shots in the box conceded over the last 4 game weeks, so I do tend to now look over 4 game weeks instead of the whole season because we are getting a lot more game weeks in. If you go to kind of game weeks 8, 9, 10, 11, you're still looking at the whole season. Obviously, a lot can change going forward. So I'm only looking at the last 4 game weeks. So I think it's Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea and Man City are still there. So the top teams are still conceding kind of the fewest chances. So I still want a Man City player there. I think one thing to consider as well is obviously you're not going to be able to wildcard for a good amount of time now once you've used it this week, if you are. So structure is something you've got to think about. So Otamendi's 5.5 million. That lets you get, if you've got a little bit of extra money, you can go up to the kind of 6 million range if you want to get Lucas Digne back at some point down the line. The likes of Pereira maybe at Leicester, or if you want to get like Tierney at Arsenal. And don't laugh, Man United defenders maybe at some point. I mean, it's all well and good saying that they're no good now, but things change quickly in FPL. So consider something like that. You could get Maguire in for 0.1 million less than Otamendi, for example. Don't want him right now, sure, but Man United really aren't conceding too many clear-cut chances compared to the competition. So when they maybe sort things out, maybe when they get rid of Solskjaer, whatever it might be, when the fixtures turn, you might want a defender. So the point is, if you've got someone like Otamendi, you've got a good price point to go to other defenders. And obviously, if you needed lots of money, you could downgrade to another 4.5. I think Leicester are doing pretty well defensively as well, and I can see some clean sheets coming. So Soyuncu's in 4.6 million. Pereira, there's a lot of love for him. He is on 40 points, same as Trent Alexander-Arnold, for less money, of course. We know he's got attacking potential. We saw it last year. If they're going to get clean sheets, if I think that Soyuncu's going to get clean sheets, then obviously Pereira is too. The thing is, he's 1.5 million more Soyuncu obviously covers the clean sheets. Bonus points could be different, obviously, depending on attack and returns, tackles, and that kind of thing. But if Soyuncu's covering the clean sheets for 1.5 million less, I think I would probably just put the money elsewhere. It's not to say that Pereira is not a good option. It's just one of those circumstances in FPL where I feel like there's a better option in defence. Could you double up? I think if they had a really, really nice set of home fixtures at some point, you could. I don't know if the fixtures are that good that warrant a double up right now, so I would just stick with the one. Kelly is in as my enabler because I think Palace, when he's been in the side, have done really well for clean sheets, and I think there's a good chance he'll keep his place. If you want to play it a little bit safer, you could go for Rico, and of course, if you've got Lundstrom for 4 million, out of position defender, you should absolutely just have him in. And Tomori, I think he's well underpriced considering how much the other Chelsea assets are. He looks to be kind of first choice centre-back, obviously behind Rudiger, but as a partnership, they are the first kind of choice. And once Rudiger's back, obviously Kante's back in the team now as well, they should be good for clean sheets. And again, not conceding as many kind of shots in the box as perhaps other teams are. So the clean sheet should come for Chelsea, especially at home. He's got Newcastle at home this week, so that would be a good fixture. In midfield, this is where it's really not changed that much. Mount and Abraham, basically, to talk about them together, even at their new prices. I think Abraham's something like 7.7 and Mount's gone up to 6.7 as well. I still think they're good options at that price. Chelsea know how to score. We've seen that over the whole season so far. Yes, clean sheets aren't quite there yet. I think that'll improve. And Tomori at his price, I think he's actually 4.7 if you buy him brand new, is still underpriced compared to other Chelsea assets. So great price. But Mount and Abraham, really, really good value. Like I said, I think Abraham would probably be the first striker on my list. I even think I'm happy enough now to captain him in good home fixtures. Obviously, the likes of Sterling, Salah, Mane have got a good fixture as well. I'd probably still steer towards them. But this week, for example, Abraham, I'm probably going to captain him. So that's how much confidence I got in him right now and how much confidence I got in Chelsea to score goals. It's the one thing they're doing that Man United aren't, is scoring goals. Man United are struggling because they can't score, and then any little chance the other team gets obviously punishes them heavily. Chelsea don't have that problem, so I would definitely have these two in. Where it gets more interesting, we'll just talk about midfield first, because it's probably less interesting. De Bruyne if fit, I think there's not many arguments. You have to get him. I've got Mane in because I need to save some money. Like I said, very close between him and Salah, but Mane has shown enough kind of over the last maybe year, or in 2019 at least, that he's absolutely got the goods to go toe-to-toe with Salah, even without penalties. So really good option and cheaper price. And I've still got Sterling instead of Aguero because I still feel the cheap forward options are a really good option this year. So the one player I don't have is Pukki. Now he's 7.1 million cost to me, so it means not having Abraham, which again, he's my number one striker choice probably right now. So it's between him and Wilson. Now Pukki, I know a lot of people saying he's cheap, and obviously you've got him for 6.5 million, it is a bit different. He's cheap, we shouldn't expect that much from him, but he has blanked 4 times in the last 5 games, and the one game he got points from was Man City. Was that lucky? Norwich had the least amount of shots out of the whole league that game week. Man City had the most. On another day, did they convert as many, convert as many shots into goals from so few that they had? I think they only had 7 shots, scored 3 goals against Man City. Not to put anything past their performance, it was really good. I love the fact they still attacked, I love the fact they still played out from the back and all that kind of thing. But 4 blanks in 5, not many players should be able to get away with that. Wilson's been so consistent, got nice fixtures coming up as well, and I just think perhaps over the long term he's the better option. So not to say that Pukki's an awful option, not to say you should definitely sell him. If you got him for 6.5, I'd probably consider keeping. In my own team, I'm not really considering getting rid of him necessarily this week. I might keep him, but I don't think the upcoming fixtures are that great for Norwich, to be completely honest. And I always felt like it was unforgivable to concede 5 against Villa and only get 1 in return. That was kind of the game I was waiting for Pukki to do something. And another blank kind of almost ended his fate for me, especially if I'm wildcarding again. So maybe if you're not wildcarding, you can still think about keeping him. But for a wildcard, I'd probably have him in. And then Morpay, maybe a little bit of a knee-jerk, because obviously he did well against Spurs, got his goal. But I think I quite like him because I didn't know too much about him before the season started. Read quite a few articles on him, looked at a lot of the stats guys that are into expected goals and all that stuff, what they thought about him, and everyone was quite positive about him because he's a player that shoots a lot. And if you look at the last 4 games, he's right up there in terms of shots in the box, slightly ahead of Pukki, got 3 nice fixtures coming up, and he's a cheap price as well. So obviously if you've got a bit more money to spend, maybe you could get Pukki instead. But for me, I've got Morpay, and I think Brighton are just looking good, full of confidence after beating Spurs 3-0, 3 nice fixtures to come. For 6 million, there's not much more that you'd maybe expect for that kind of price. Now, if I compare that to my current team, without a wildcard, I've got a 3-5-2. So I've got Yarmolenko instead, a similar price. That's really the only difference. If you go 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, it's a more pay versus a McGinn versus a Yarmolenko or something like that. So you take your pick, and that kind of chooses your formation. And then the Canvas started every game in the last kind of 4 or 5, so 4.4 million is decent. If you went 3-5-2 and had Yarmolenko, then I'd obviously go for someone like Connolly as my 8th attacker up front for 4.5 million. Brian looks like a good pick. But that's the draft. Let me know what you think. Let me know who I've absolutely missed out and who you would have in instead. So that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. Like I said, let me know in the comments below what you think of the draft, who you definitely have in your team. Obviously, a few players I've missed out. Madison, very hard to fit him into that team that I had. Vardy, again, it's another 1.9 or 1.5, kind of 2 million extra on top to get him in ahead of those strikers. Is he worth the extra money? Should I take some money out of midfield? Let me know. So I think they're good options, Madison and Vardy. It's just trying to fit them in with all the other players is difficult. If you had a bit more team value, maybe you take out more pay, go 3-5-2 and put Madison in midfield instead. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think. Are you wildcarding this week? How's your team shaping up to be? Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, thumbs up is always appreciated. Subscribe if you're new around here. That will let you know when all my videos are going live if you hit the thumb. More content to come this week, and then we'll do the usual stuff next week to kind of preview my team selection and stuff like that. But loads of FPL content coming out on this channel over the next couple of weeks. Enjoy the international break, take a little bit of a rest, and come back fully recharged for Game Week 9 in a couple of weeks. And I will catch you next time.